what I want to kind of dive into a little bit here is if we can actually, Megan, if you can click over to the next slide. I'm sure most of people on the call probably know who Airbnb is, but at a high level, we're a platform that really connect travelers with people who have spaces, homes, and things that they want to list. We are now over 4 million global properties. And just to put that into perspective, that's more than the top 5 hotel chains combined. We're 191 countries, 65,000 cities. But more importantly, we've had over 200 million guest arrivals since we launched in 2015. So again, from a scale perspective, that's fairly significant. So about 3 years ago, as we started doing some, analysis on the overall business, we started realizing that more and more people were traveling for business on the platform. And how we started noticing that is we just started looking at email domains and realized, either people are traveling for leisure using the work addresses, or they're actually traveling for business. So this was back again 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. We were sitting at about 10% of our travelers were actually traveling for business. So we did a little more deeper dives. We contacted some travelers, we contacted some travel managers and realized, this is actually companies traveling for business. So we realized we need to get a lot more serious about the platform. We realized that business travelers can't be staying in some of the fun Airbnb properties such as tree houses and yurts and igloos and all the fun stuff that a lot of us enjoy staying at when we're on leisure trips. Obviously, those types of properties come with risk and safety concerns and the type of stuff that give our travel managers aneurysms and keep them awake at night. So we decided what was probably best is let's take a step back and actually develop a platform that would be focused specifically on the business travel. Megan, can we click over here? Unless we have a question.
Well, no, actually, I think this would be a great time to actually move to our poll before you get into those details regarding some of our participants today's concerns regarding why, they might not allow their travelers to utilize Airbnb. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this. I'm hoping, can everyone see the poll on my screen? Nigel?
I can see it, yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to give a couple minutes just to see, and then we can showcase the results.
Great.
They're starting to come in. We're about 50% voted for. Give it another 30 seconds. So I can read the poll too, obviously. So what was your biggest concern regarding travelers utilizing Airbnb while on business? So these are ones that you've definitely highlighted and talked through.
What's great about these 3 in particular that you've listed here is this is really where these 3 are kind of where I spend most of my days, probably 90% of my days talking through. So it's great that these are poll questions right now.
Okay, so here is a look at our results. So 14% said trust. Majority, 89%, said safety. Then the quality of the accommodations, 26%, said was one of the issues, and then there's other issues. So in the Q&A, if you wanted to highlight some of your other issues, we can address those as well.
Perfect, yeah. So I think one of the first things I'll talk about, I think I've actually listed, have a lot of this listed at the end, trust and safety. But so maybe I'll leave the safety towards the end, and I can definitely touch upon trust and quality of accommodation soon, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, and another, actually someone just opened in the Q&A was consistency was one of the things that they said was one of their concerns.
Yes, definitely. So maybe if we go to the next slide, I can address some of the first 2 topics.
Yep.
Perfect. So, when we talked about, we launched a whole separate platform, we went and launched Airbnb for Work. And actually we are about another 3.5 weeks away from fully launching another brand new website, which will actually be airbnbforwork.com. So again, that's going to take a little bit more time to launch, but it'll address some of the things I'm talking about here. So as I mentioned, companies had concerns about quality and consistency. They had concerns about visibility into where the travelers were going. And then of course, a little bit more about duty of care. So what we did was, of the 4 million properties we have globally, we decided that we'd parse out some of the non-business travel friendly accommodations. So when you go to airbnbforwork.com, you're not going to be able to pull up those shared accommodations. You're not going to see boats and tree houses and yurts. What you're going to see is optimized and curated properties specifically for business travelers. So when I go into Airbnb for Work and I'm looking for a place in San Francisco, again, I'm going to see these places that we've curated. These are places with Wi-Fi, places with 24-hour check-in, and places with amenities that we come to expect as business travelers. And those are everything from toiletries to hair dryers, clothes irons, things of that nature. What we've also built here is we went and built a company dashboard. So as a travel manager, you can actually go on and see where your travelers are staying at any point in time, pull financial reports and things of that nature. In here, again, if you've already booked with us, you'll be able to see kind of some of the accommodations on the right side there with stars and reviews. And this really kind of talks to the whole trust aspect. So Airbnb was really built on trust, right? It's strangers staying in strangers' homes was really how the whole company started. And how we verified that trust was, and this is still our secret sauce till this day, is actual reviews. So it's, after you leave an Airbnb, after you've had a stay, we ask our travelers and hosts, because it's all about keeping both sides of the community safe, to provide double-blind reviews. So I don't see the other review until I've written mine. And these are how the reviews get posted. So before I stay at a place, I want to find a place with lots of great reviews. And I read those reviews and I can make sure that this is a comfortable place for me. And vice versa, the host wants to make sure that they're getting somebody who's coming into their place to ensure that they're quality people as well. So they look at my reviews and ultimately decide this is a good match and we can make this happen. Now, what we also do, and I'm going to touch upon this a little later too, though, from a trust perspective, is when you register with Airbnb, either as a traveler or a host, we ask you to register with a government-issued ID. So that might be a driver's license, a passport, and we run kind of high-level, first-level background checks to ensure that there's nothing nefarious in your background. If there is something there, we kick you off as a host and as a traveler. And this isn't anything that credit card companies don't do and things of that nature. But this is something that hotels don't do, right? So you can check in with a hotel as long as you can pay, you can walk in. You can't quite do that with Airbnb. So can we click over to the next slide? So again, this was something that became very important to us as we were talking with travel managers, was they really wanted to see a more detailed reporting into the employees. So you're not just able to pull financial reports, which you can see there from the screenshot. You're actually also able to pull where your employees are staying. So for instance, say Megan is in California and there's an earthquake. I can pull up her report and I can pull up who she's staying with. I can contact the host and saying, listen, we haven't heard from Megan. She's not answering our calls, not answering text messages. Can you stop by the listing to make sure she's okay? We can even review the quality of the listing if we're unsure of where she's staying as well, and things like that. And we can pull these reports and export them to CSVs, because a lot of times their travel managers want to run comparisons of their hotel ADRs versus Airbnbs, so we can pull all that for you easily as well. We also have account people who are assigned to you when you're at a certain level of spend, where the account person is there for everything you need, for everything from how do I properly roll this out within my company, how do I properly pull reports and things of that nature. Can we go to the next one, Megan? Perfect. We also started looking at, how do we work on ease of use for our companies as well? So duty of care and safety is obviously very, very important. So we've partnered with iJet, ISOS, Anvil, and United Healthcare from a duty of care perspective. So again, imagine something goes wrong there's another earthquake or flood somewhere, and you are working with one of these duty of care providers. It's a data integration, so all this information would automatically be fed into one of these providers, so you wouldn't have to come back to Airbnb to say, to your dashboard to say, oh great, who's in California? All this information would already automatically be plugged into your duty care provider, and you could pull it from a single location. We've also partnered with Concur from an expense perspective, so you wouldn't have to pull third-party expenses. You can just go to Concur if you're a partner with them. And we are just now testing where Airbnb is actually going to be part of Concur's online booking tool. So we're just testing with 3 clients right now where if you are using Concur and you turn on Airbnb, Airbnbs will actually appear alongside some of your other traditional hospitality and accommodation partners.
We have a question around that. Would it still incorporate the same policy that they have for hotels and other accommodations through that booking process?
Can you give me an example?
So if the data or the results are being pulled into Concur, however their specific account is set up, will it be able to follow the same policy restrictions they'd have for hotels or any accommodations?
Yeah, it would pull. We can't stop them from booking just because obviously there's situations where somebody has to book outside of policy. Say they're booking last minute and it's compression night, whatever the case is. But it does come up on the screen as, here's your booking policy for this city during these dates. Please be aware before you book.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. And that kind of brings up a great question actually about policy. I'd say 90% of the clients we deal with actually integrate Airbnb very specifically into their travel policies. So what I mean by that is very few are saying, feel free to book Airbnb anytime you want. Very few, and almost no one is using us specifically, sort of exclusively as a travel partner. We really see ourselves as a complement to hotels. So first of all, many of our listings aren't listed anywhere near hotels. So where the hotels are actually inconvenient for a lot of travelers, Airbnbs work well. Airbnb's average stay for business is actually 5+ days. So it's, I think we've all been on the road a fair amount of time where after the 3rd or 4th day, you desperately want a kitchen, you want a living room, you want to be in a neighborhood, you're kind of tired of walking to the hotel lobby. So a lot of companies are integrating us differently in that sense, where, some companies will say Airbnb is only allowed when you're booking, 4+ nights or 5+ nights. Airbnb is only allowed in these specific cities. And Airbnb is only allowed when hotel ADRs exceed whatever number. So again, this is kind of where our account people sit down with you to work out, how do Airbnb best fit into your policy, and then how do we best roll that out and communicate that to our traveling employees. Do you want to click on to the next slide? Now, another reason why people choose us is obviously cost savings. Once a lot of companies have kind of maxed out their savings in hotels, next place we're trying to find costs is actually with Airbnb. So, on the various tests we've done, we're anywhere from 30 to 45% less expensive than hotels. And again, these are straight ADRs, but when we start comparing different amenities, obviously it gets a little different. For instance, not all our places have gyms. Not all of our places aren't going to have daily cleaning. On the other side of it, we have living rooms and kitchens, and you're staying in different neighborhoods, different access to food and things like that. Do we want any other polls or anything you want to go to before I get to kind of trust and safety?
Yeah, so I can pop up our last poll right now. So this one was in regards to spend. So I know this is an area that you secretly are very interested based on all of our attendees, but how much of your accommodation budget is being spent with Airbnb annually today? So we have a variety. We did it in a percentage terms just to get a better idea of who attending today and how they were how they're using it. And I think the I have no clue option was kind of helps tie into why travelers and companies that are using it might benefit from Airbnb for work, just to help gauge that better.
For sure. And while we're waiting on this, maybe I can even talk a little bit about kind of where we've seen the rise in business travel. And I think a lot of people on the call will probably, kind of nod with me with this is, quite frankly, it's the rise of the millennial traveler. So, the workforce is changing. Soon more than 50% of the workforce is actually going to be millennials who are traveling. And a lot of the millennials, quite frankly, want better choice, want better options. Most of the millennials we poll are actually tacking on a Saturday or Sunday onto the trip. So that whole leisure blending with business, the bleisure concept, is really what's driving this. It was interesting. I was at a travel conference recently, and a consultant from one of the large consultancies came up to me, and she was probably late 20s. And she made a very interesting comment to me, which was, as a working professional, I've never known a world that doesn't have Airbnb in it. Right. So while many of us are on this call, and I'm far from a millennial, Airbnb is relatively new. A lot of these new working professionals now have only ever stayed with Airbnb or have grown up in a world with Airbnb. And I think that's the same for obviously with Uber and Lyft and on-demand services. Like, this is really part of their lifestyle. And this is where, we're really seeing a growth in our business of not just the millennials, but also travel managers, kind of huddling around and saying, you know what, we need to get a grasp on this and figure out how we work it into our policies. And again, what those parameters are.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so here are results, and these probably align a little bit with what my thoughts would be. You would have more insight, obviously, but 3% are within 10 to 50% of their accommodation budget is being spent, and then about 1 to 10% had almost 20%, and then most of our attendees were either I have no clue or less than 1% today. But I would be interested to see if we did this exact same poll this time next year to see how those results would change and are going to keep continuing to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I've already seen it now between last year and this year, just the rise in growth from certain clients and partners that we work with. And something, again, if anyone has any questions more about that, especially for the last group there who isn't sure, I can pull the data, and you'd be shocked how many companies we walk back in with, and I say, did you know that you've got 1,000 registered travelers? While many of them haven't traveled with us, they've organically come and registered with us to travel, and 15% of them are traveling, and they've spent X, Y, Z, and it really opens their eyes, and then they're able to go back and start reviewing their own numbers and realize, what, I think we missed some stuff in here, and if we're not capturing that data properly, then you're losing out on potential rebates and savings in your travel program later. So again, more than happy to discuss some of that if some of you are unsure about what your travel spend is and where your travel spend is going.
Yeah, actually, this kind of ties into one question, but have you ever considered any kind of rewards programs for like the Airbnb for Work platform?
Yeah, we're actually, this is semi-confidential, but we are actually working on a rewards program right now. It's never really been, believe it or not, it's never really been something that has been asked. I think when we all started here, we realized if we don't have something comparable to, say, Starwoods points or whatever the case is, we're really going to lose out. And we started realizing that it never really popped up as a major question. It's starting to a little bit more and more, but again, I think if we get back to the millennial traveler, they're not as consumed with accumulating points and rewards as I think some of the rest of us are. That said, we are going to start launching something. We also do have a rebate program for companies. So once they start hitting certain amounts of spend, then we definitely start seeing that happen. Something else I want to touch on as well before I think I get into this last piece here on trust and safety, which is definitely a little more meaty, is and I kind of glossed over it. Actually, maybe I didn't touch on it earlier. It's kind of our use cases. So while we're definitely, for our traditional, it's called a business days of people staying 5-ish days plus, we've really seen a growth area in a couple areas. One is actually relocation and mobility. This is probably our perfect use case for Airbnb. And this is people who are relocating new cities or just long-term stays where, 30, 60, 90 days, you just can't be in a hotel without shooting yourself. You really want to be in a home. Especially say you might be traveling with family or families coming to visit you from time to time. You want your kitchens, you want to move from neighborhood to neighborhood. So we're working with some of the larger relocation companies in the world to basically integrate with them and figure out how that works. Another big area is actually higher education or education management, as we call it. Going into last year, tech was our biggest vertical from business travelers. As you could probably assume, Facebook, Google, Salesforce, the world, heavy users of ours. As we rounded out 2017, we pulled our data. Higher education is actually our biggest user right now. And that's everything, we've got not just faculty traveling, we've got students traveling, we've got sports teams traveling, some big schools who have hospitals are using us as patients are coming in, recruiting trips and families, and sooner moving into events, experience, and spaces. So again, let's call it as a school. Imagine being able to Airbnb some of your unused conference rooms that are sitting there. Imagine your teams are going to an event. The March Madness is coming up. Imagine your students are going out there and being able to capture all their information as they're staying at Airbnbs in various cities. So we're making a much bigger push into higher education in 2018. That'll actually probably be its own brand, where we'll get very, very specific about how we address students, faculty, alumni, and things like that traveling as well.
Awesome. Yeah. If you go ahead and talk to this last.
Great. And how are we doing on time, by the way? I don't want to run over.
Yeah, no, if you want to take a couple more minutes, but we have a line of questions, so I'd like to make sure we get to those. So just talk a little bit about the trust and safety, and then I'll get to those questions.
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier, we do an initial line against of background checks against your government issued ID. We also work with third parties and watch lists to ensure that nothing else is going on. And these are, again, the same watch list and third party companies that credit card companies work with that is monitoring for let's call them fraudulent activity across various areas such as social, your credit cards, your bank accounts, and things of that nature. So we're always monitoring to make sure nothing fraudulent is happening on our platform. As long as it happens on our platform, the negative instances that's actually happened with Airbnb has been 0.0001%. And that's tracking back to 2015. We have trust and safety experts around the world. So as a business traveler, you actually get prioritized business line support. Something goes wrong, you lose your key, you can't find your host, you're not comfortable with your accommodations. You call this prioritized business line support. And this number is issued to you when you book an Airbnb for business, or for work, I should call it, where you call that number, you get bumped up to the top of the line for anything that happens. We take trust and safety very, very serious at Airbnb. Again, it's kind of what the entire company's been built on. And again, I know we're running out of time here a little bit. I'm more than happy to follow up as a group or individually with some more information.
Sounds good. Yes, we will move to the Q&A right now. Get to that slide. Okay, so some of them that we have coming in. Does the homeowner have liability, or does Airbnb hold the liability insurance?
Airbnb has $1 million insurance on the traveler and $1 million of insurance on the property. And okay. we're actually, again, this is semi-confidential, but it'll be announced probably relatively soon, but we're actively working to increase both those values.
Gotcha. Okay, so back to the Concur integration. If a booking is done in Concur, will the data show up on dashboards and reporting?
It will, yes, correct.
Okay. And then, so more of an admin question, does the site that a company set up operate under a master account tied to a company, or do individuals access it on their own? Or is it a mix of both?
It did. So the individuals would access it on their own. So they would go to, myself as a traveler, I would go to Airbnb.com or Airbnbforwork.com, and I would basically book my place. We would then attach Short's travel email address to the Short's account. And then as the travel manager, we'll say to you, Megan, you'd be able to go in and under that master account, you'd see anyone traveling under that email domain.
Okay. And then kind of tying along with that, whenever you have a Airbnb for Work account, how does payment work?
A number of ways. It's more or less how you want it to work. So we can set up monthly invoicing. We can assign personal cards, company cards, and all three. So for instance, myself right now, we're set up on all three. So when I go to book an Airbnb when I'm traveling, and when it comes time to check out, I had the option of using a company card, personal card, or company invoicing.
Okay.
And as an admin, you could even decide who gets what. So for instance, your marketing teams could have a specific card. Your finance teams could have a specific card. We can get fairly granular with some of that.
Okay, and earlier, you mentioned the whole rating system, which has been a huge basis of your success in building that trust. And so since many of the business travelers haven't necessarily used Airbnb Airbnb, sorry, today. How can hosts get positive ratings on them, or is it more positive ratings on the company as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. Generally, when the hosts see that it's coming through as a business booking, and again, we realized that was definitely an issue where new business travelers were having a hard time getting places. The host actually views it comes through as a little more positive. So, for instance, if just random traveler Nigel signs up and has no reviews, as a host, they're definitely a little weary. But if it comes through and says, this is Nigel from Google, they realize that, okay, this is a business traveler who's also bound under their employment contract. So they're far less likely to throw a party, punch a hole in the wall, and, all the stuff we hope our travelers aren't doing. Because again, they're bound by an employment contract. So that's all. That usually helps get people through the door, literally and then theoretically, so they can start generating reviews.
Perfect. Okay, I think that is all the questions we have today, and we are right at the top of the hour. 30 minutes in, not top of the hour. But here is our contact information. If you want to contact Shorts Travel for any specific questions, feel free to use the sales@shortstravel.com, or you can reach out to Nigel directly. I know he would love to get some feedback from any of the attendees, and we'd be more than happy to connect everyone as well. So stay on the lookout for next month's details of our travel talk. We're going to continue to keep it the last Tuesday of the month at noon Central Time, so that early afternoon. But thank you so much for leading our travel talk today. It was very informational, and I know everyone appreciates it. It's one of our most highly attended travel talks so far. So a great way to start out the new year.
Great, and thanks for having me. And very quickly, I did notice one last question came through from Talia, which was, what's the cost to use this? There is zero cost to use us. We make money off this the same way we take it from leisure, which is we take a small percentage of the sale. We don't ask for any minimums, any guarantees. When you want to sign up, we simply assign you as a lead on a dashboard. It takes about 10 seconds, and that's it. But again, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. More than happy to answer any other questions or even just talk to you about some of your current travelers who are working with us or traveling with us at least.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.